Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Thanks for joining me in this video as we take our next steps in our Linux journey. And by the way, as I say this in all my videos, make sure you go ahead and check out the description because there's always links to playlists. And I'm referring to the Linux playlist in case you guys are new and you're seeing this video for the first time. So welcome to my new folks. But, if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back as well. And again, I say this in all my videos. Check the other videos out because we build on ideas and concepts of the past. So at this point, right, we were well into this journey and there's a lot of things that I use and I leverage, and I mean things that I've discussed in the past. So if you guys get lost, and it's going to be very easy to get lost, it's always good to start from the bottom of that playlist and work your way up to where we are today. And where we are today is we're actually going to go over two commands that are going to be very, very helpful for you in your Linux journey, especially if you're using Linux a lot. And the two commands that I'm going to refer to are the locate command and the find command. And these commands are leveraged in order to find things. So real quick, guys, before we jump into those commands, let's go ahead and give a like for the video as it helps the channel grow. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. That way you're notified when I upload new videos like this one. And lastly, of course, share this with a family member or friend who's interested in learning. So let's jump into things real quickly. And I have my terminal up here and it looks like we have some software updates. So let's just get that out of the way. But let's jump into some of these commands. And again, in the last video, we actually talked about mounting our flash drives and being able to look inside of it. But the interesting thing is how do you go ahead and look for files inside of a mounted file system? And one of the interesting things is that you don't have to sit here and search for things. There are commands that actually help you do that much easily. And so let's go ahead and bring up the two commands real quickly. We'll take a look at what they are. And then we'll do some examples together so that way you can see how they all work. All right, so first one on the list is the locate command. So let's go ahead and do a man locate. And essentially, we are going to look at the manual pages for this locate command. And it says here, find files by name. And it's interesting because it even tells us locate reads one or more databases by updatedb and writes files names matching at least one of the patterns to standard output. So what this actually means is that when you are actually looking for a particular file, locate will take a look at its internal database to see if it exists. And that database is what it pulls the information in order to find things and present it to you. So if I were to take a quick peek here, let's go ahead and do an ls and see what we have. And we see here, there's some files that I've had here on the desktop for quite some time. And I'm going to focus on the Lewis PDF file there. So if I were to say, hey, locate lewis.pdf, it actually shows us exactly where it is. It tells us the full path. So /home/elacosta/lewis.pdf. And the interesting thing about it is that this information is stored in a database. And that database, believe it or not, actually doesn't get refreshed in real time. So that means if I were to create a new file and I don't update that database, then the locate command does not know where that file exists. So let's test it out so that way you can actually see what I'm talking about. So if I were to create a file and I call it touch, and by the way, touch, I've used this command in the past before. It allows us to create empty files if it doesn't exist. So we'll say touch lewis.pdf2. And by the way, in the Linux world, there's no such things as extensions. So that's why you can name something .pdf2 and it still works, unlike the Windows world where you need extensions. And if you don't put .pdf, well, then you'll never have a PDF file, right? So anyways, that aside, let's create this particular file now, right? So I actually created it. Let's do an ls. And we can see that there is the new file that I created. It says lewis.pdf2. Now, because I didn't update the database where locate uses in order to get its information, if I were to do now locate and I were to say lewis.pdf2, let's see what we get back from this command. Look at that. I didn't get any return. And the reason why I didn't get any returns is because that database is not updated in real time. You have to go ahead and update the databases so that way it goes and it finds the information that it needs. And the way that we do that is we use the command called updatedb, which, by the way, updatedb, update database, right? So let's run this command. And it tells us cannot open a temporary file. Let's elevate our privileges in order to do that. So sudo update db. I forgot to mention that we're supposed to elevate our privileges in order to do this. So now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and run the same command that we had before, which was locate that lewis.pdf2 file that I created. And what do you know? It actually found the path now. It knows the full path, whereas before, right, it didn't know that path because the database was never updated. So in a nutshell, you could use this locate command, but I'm not a big fan of it because you really have to update this database to make sure the operating system knows exactly where all the files are, because it doesn't happen in real time. But that is just one simple command, which leads us over now into our next command that we're going to learn about. And that is, of course, the find command. So before I do that, though, let's go ahead and remove this file because I don't want to keep things here just to keep them. So we'll remove that lewis.pdf2 file, and we're all set there. Now let's focus a little bit on the find command and see what that is all about. So of course, we're going to do a man and we'll type in find. And it tells us here that find searches for files in a directory hierarchy. So you can go ahead and read the description at your own time, but this is a very, very powerful command. And you should know this very, very well. And in fact, actually, if you're ever interested in taking some certifications, this command is often found in those exams. So we're going to run through a couple of examples together so that way we can figure out how we can find things. And hopefully those examples actually work best for you. So let's quit out of this. So let's go ahead and break down the find command and see how we actually leverage it. And of course, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to type in find, right? That's, you want to find something. Now, the next thing is we're going to have to type in where do we want to find things? Where do you want this command to go search for things? And remember, this is important now to understand how to navigate the operating system, because if you are putting a specific path on there, that's the path it's going to look in. So for example, let's say I want to look into my home directory. So in order to do that, you do /home/username, which is El Acosta. This is where I want you to find something. So as an example now, let's say I'm interested in looking for anything with the word Lewis in there. Or should I say any strings that has Lewis, and anything else after that, it doesn't matter. And you're seeing here on my output from before, I have a couple of files that are called Lewis. There's different things such as hard link, finding, so on and so forth. So here's the next option that we can use. We can do a -name for the name of the file. And then now I'm going to do a single tick. And by the way, that single tick there is going to be right next to the enter key. That's to the left of the enter key. And here is where I can say Lewis. And then I can put a star here, and that star stands for a wildcard, meaning that any character after this Lewis string, it can be anything. And that's what that particular wildcard is, that star. So we're going to go ahead and close the single tick again. And remember, that is next to the enter key to the left. And now we are all set to run this command and see what files it finds in my /home/El Acosta. And I'm looking for anything with the word Lewis in there, or the string Lewis. And remember, a string is nothing more than a bunch of characters together. So LUIS, that's a string. And often you'll hear me say a character. So for example, L is a character, U is a character, I is a character, S is a character. Those combined together is a string. All right, so let's go and run this command and see what we get now. And as you see here, there's a couple of things that it found. So it looks like Lewis findings, Lewis.sh, Lewis PDF, Lewis hardlink, and Lewis softlink. And the really cool thing is that you can actually take some of the commands that we've learned in the past now and we can go ahead and combine them together to make another powerful command. So if somebody says to you, hey, how many files in the home directory for El Acosta do you see anything with the word Lewis in it? You can actually leverage the same command as before, except now you can actually do a pipe, meaning take the output of the last command and put it into the input of another command. And the other command is WC for word count. And we're going to count the lines. That's what the -L is for. And so if we run this command now, we will answer that previous question that we asked before. And the answer is 5. We found 5 different files that have the word Lewis in there, right? And you can actually see that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very cool of how you can take all these commands together to really make a powerful command to give you the answer to certain things. All right, so that is simple for the find command. Let's go through some of these other examples, and some of these examples are actually going to be in the man page. So meaning that if we were to go ahead and type man find, you can go ahead into the options now, and you can see some of these options are going to be very, very critical for some of the actual examples that we're going to do. I'm not going to do all of the examples that you're going to see here in the actual manual page, but I will do some of them that we will commonly see. So let's head out of here real quick and let's take a look at some of these examples and run through them together. So let's go ahead and say, okay, I want to find, and I'm going to do a slash here. And the reason why we do a slash is because that is going to be the root of the directory. So meaning the topmost. I want you to search for everything. And if you guys know what the root directory is, that is in the file hierarchy. And that is also in the man pages. So you should be well familiar with that right now. So let's go ahead and say, okay, I want to search the entire computer. And let's go ahead and search by what is called user. And so this flag here tells you, hey, search for any file. And if the user owns this file, let me know what it is. And so in our particular case, let's go ahead and say El Acosta. I want to know every single file that exists on this computer that El Acosta owns. And now, since there's going to be so much output here, because it's going to search through the entire computer file structure, so we're going to have to pipe this now into a less. And so what that allows me to do is it allows me to control the output that comes to the terminal. So let's go and run this command and see what we get. So as you're seeing here, these are all the files that El Acosta owns. And remember, in the Linux world, a directory is a file. So that's why you're actually seeing this. If you're wondering, hey, these look like directories, they don't look like files. So I was able to scroll to the bottom now, and it looks like this is still going. So it looks like it just finished. Now, there's a lot of files that were owned by El Acosta, and you're seeing here, man, we got a lot of different things that popped up. So if we go ahead and we ask the questions, well, how many files is owned by El Acosta? If we quit out of here and we actually take the previous command, instead of piping it to a less, let's go ahead and pipe it into a word count. And we're going to count all the lines here. And let's see how many files we have in this operating system that is owned by the user, El Acosta. And as you're seeing now, when I ran the command, you have a couple of permission denied. That means that it tried searching a directory in which it doesn't have permissions to do so. And for example, the permissions are for El Acosta. So keep that in mind, guys, when you're running some of these commands. And so essentially, the files that we have permissions to in order to find, we can see 58,529 files that are owned essentially by El Acosta. Really cool how you can leverage a simple command to find out some very powerful information, such as, hey, how many files is on this operating system that is owned by this particular user? All right, so that answers one question. What about we have not only the users, but what about the groups that they're in? We can actually do a very similar command here, and we can say, hey, instead of finding a user, let's go ahead and find a particular group. And we can spell group. And then what is that group that you're looking for? So in our particular case, we're going to search for the group called wheel. And if you know about the wheel group, it is actually the same group that you use in order to make sure that you elevate your privileges. We'll talk about at a later date what that sudo privileges are and what the wheel group has to do with it. But just know that the wheel group is in there. So let's do wheel. So now let's say after I pipe this into a word count and I'm going to count the lines with that -L, let's say I'm interested in just finding all the files that are associated with the group called wheel, and you're going to give me a count of what that looks like. So let's go ahead and hit enter here. Now remember, we're not elevating our privileges. So I do expect to see something similar to the last output where you have a couple of permissions denied. So let's go ahead and run this command. So as you're seeing here, we have a lot of permissions denied because, again, the wheel group doesn't have permissions to see all kinds of things. But you're seeing there's only two files now. So if I am interested in seeing what those two files are, I can just actually remove that pipe that you have there into word count. And let's just take a look and see what we find. All right, so we got a lot of output here, and it's given us a lot of things where it says permission denied. And this permission denied goes on and on and on. And the problem here, it's funny that I actually found the two files that I'm interested in, but what happens if they weren't easily accessible or easily findable, like I just ran into them, right? You got a lot of permissions denied and there's a lot of things to go here. So what we can do is we can actually take these error messages and we can actually send them to the trash. So that way I don't see all these permissions denied. And all I want to see are the two files like I happened to find because I was scrolling and I happened to run into them. So let's go ahead and do something really clever. So that way we can only take a look at the two files that we're interested in instead of all this output that says permission denied because I don't have the proper permissions to look, especially when I'm using L Acosta for the find command. So with that being said, we can take a look at our previous command, except this time now we're going to add something special where we're going to say to greater than /dev/null. And essentially what this is in a nutshell is it's saying, hey, any errors that you have, just go ahead and send them in the trash. That's exactly what that means. So we can go ahead and run this command and see what we get. But if you're actually wondering how to really break this down instead of just taking the short synopsis that I gave you what this means, there are previous videos that I have done that showcase what standard error is, standard output is, what the 1, the 2, and the 0 mean. So go check those out if you really have questions as to what I'm saying when it comes to that particular portion of the command that I put on there. So let's go ahead and run this. And as you're seeing, we got rid of all the errors, meaning the permission denied. And now we're seeing the two files that I am able to see, right? I searched the whole entire computer, and without elevating my privileges, El Acosta has the ability, or should I say, excuse me, not El Acosta, the wheel group. Um, I'm not going to edit that part out, but I will say the wheel group, that's what we were searching for. I do apologize. The wheel group is anybody who's associated with that group, they have access to these two files right here. So just like you guys saw where you can go ahead and search for files using the username and groups, the same thing can be done with using the UID and the GID. And we talked about this in the past. So real quickly, I can run the command ID and take a look at El Acosta. And you can see that my UID for El Acosta is 1000 and the GID is also 1000 for the group. Now, you can actually search using that, which is really interesting. So let's go ahead and do a quick little example here. That way you can also do the GID, but I'll do the UID so that way you can see it. So if I were to say, go ahead and find me any file, and the file is going to be associated with UID 1000. Now remember, 1000 is El Acosta, right? So find me any file in the operating system that is associated with El Acosta. And in order to make this a little bit easier, because there's going to be a lot of output with this particular command right here, I'm going to search for something in particular. And let's say, for example, I want to search for anything that has the word Lewis in it. So I can go ahead and pipe this into a grep, and I can search for the word Lewis. And I'm going to put a wildcard here because I want anything after the word Lewis. So I'm going to close this up. And let's go ahead and run this command and see what we get. It shows you that we have Lewis findings, Lewis SH, Lewis PDF, hard link, and soft link. And remember, last time we realized that there was 5 files in the operating system that had this. So it says easy as taking the previous command. And then you're saying, okay, find me any file on the operating system where it has a UID of 1000, which of course is El Acosta. Search for anything that is particular with the word Lewis in there. So meaning filter that out. That's what the grep command is for. And then now pipe whatever you find into a word count and give me how many you found by counting the lines. And that is how you get the 5. So it's very cool of how you're able to take these commands and you start to build upon them to make them into something a little bit more powerful and give you a little bit more meaning to them. And that's how you start building these together. Now, again, same thing can be done with the GID, but I'm not going to bore you guys with that. You guys can practice on your own with that. But just to give you a little heads up of what you can do. By the way, guys, same thing can be done with the permissions if you ever are interested in searching for a particular permission of a file. So let's say, for example, I want to look in my home directory and I'm interested in looking for any file with specific permissions. So I can do a -perm, and that stands for permissions. Now I'm going to go ahead and do -644. And what are those permissions? Well, you guys should know exactly what 644 means. 6 is read and write, but no execute. 4 is read only. So it's essentially saying, hey, for the users, I want you to go ahead and look for any file that has the ability to go ahead and read and write to the file. For the groups, anybody who has the ability to read, that's what the 4 is. And for others, make sure that they also have read permissions. So that's what 644 is. So I'm going to go ahead and run this command and see how much output we get. We might get a lot here, actually. So it looks like we got a couple of things here. So you're seeing all of these files that match the permissions. And if we were to go ahead and copy and paste one of these, and we were to do an LL on that particular file. Now, if you're actually looking at the output now and you're saying, gee, Lewis, I thought it was supposed to be a 644, which means read, write, read only, and read only. It's actually very interesting. It's anything that matches that, meaning matches 644. And technically speaking, we are matching 644 because 6 means the user has read and write permissions, which you're seeing here. And also you have read permissions in the group, which definitely is there, except this one has write permissions. We didn't specify specifically, hey, we want write only or read only. We said we just want to be able to read the files for the groups, and it matches right here. And then of course, our everybody else, meaning the outside world, they have read permissions at a minimum. So this actually makes a lot of sense if you are wondering, hey, why isn't it 644? And why is it that we got 664 here? Let's take a look at another example. Let's say I want to take a look at ls errors. Same thing, read, write, and read. Let's say I'm interested in finding files with the entire permissions open. Let's see if we find anything there. So if you guessed it, that is 777. So that means everything is wide open. And looks like we have a couple files here. And by the way, guys, this is actually a very useful command because if you're ever interested in seeing, hey, what files on the system do we have that are wide open, which can cause a huge security threat, this is a good way to figure out what those files are. So if you're seeing here, I actually have a file for my soft link and I actually left that wide open. That can be a huge security threat. Could possibly be. I mean, in this case, it's a learning environment, so not really, we don't care. But if I were to do an LL on that, we can actually see that our permissions are wide open. Read, write, execute, read, write, execute, read, write, execute. So it's a cool way of finding things by leveraging permissions. Now, the last example that I want to show you guys is how to use the find command in order to find things using the size parameter. And now the size parameter is very interesting because it allows you to find files very, very quickly. As an example, let's say you have a big file and you forgot the name of it, but you know it was a certain size or roughly roundabout a certain size. That's a great example of where you can use the size command in order to be able to help you find those files much quicker. Or another example, let's say you want to do a little bit of house cleanup and you say, hey, you know what? I'm not interested in keeping files that are over a gigabyte in size. Maybe it is, something that is taking up a lot of space and I'm not interested in keeping those things. So we're just going to delete them. That could be another way you can leverage it. But again, be very, very careful because with great power comes great responsibility. So you don't want to delete something and not realize that, hey, maybe I needed it and I was just filtering based off of a size. So I'm just giving you some basic examples here. So be careful on how you use this. But to that example, let's say I'm interested in finding a file that is bigger than a particular file size. So what we can do here is we can do the find command. So let's go ahead and type in find. I'm going to go search at the root directory here. And let's say I am interested in finding a file. So I'm going to use the dash size option here. A file that is bigger. So we're going to do +1 and then capital G here for 1 GB in size. So any file that is over 1 GB in size or higher, I want to see that here. And that's what this command is. So I can go ahead now and even better build upon what we used last time. And remember, it's going to search every single directory in the OS because I'm at the root directory. So I don't want to see these permissions denied that we were seeing before. So remember, I can take our errors now, which is going to be the number 2, and I can go ahead and send that to the garbage, which is dev/null. So let's go ahead and run this command now and see what we get. And here we go. We have, of course, 2 different outputs. So it's as easy as taking our path here. It looks like we have this RHEL DV ISO. Let's do an ls-lah on there and paste that path. It is 12 gigabytes in size. So this was a great way to see, okay, any files that are bigger than 1 GB in size. All right, guys, so at this point, I showed you a lot of different examples of how you can leverage the find command to find things a lot easier. Now, there are additional options that I didn't talk about that are very important, such as modification time, or maybe you want to find directories only. Maybe you only want to find soft links, hard links. Like, there's so many ways you can slice and dice this. But again, in the interest of making sure that this video is not too long, we'll leave it at this for now. So hopefully you guys learned a lot about how to find things, especially using the find and the locate command. So keep practicing. Practice makes perfect. And if you have any questions, go ahead and leave me a comment in the comment section below. And as always, guys, if you're enjoying the content that I'm putting out there for you and it's helping you out, go ahead and give me a like for the video as it helps the channel grow. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. That way you're notified when I upload new videos to the channel. And then lastly, of course, share this with a family member or friend who's also interested in learning about tech, and maybe we can kick off their tech journey. All right, guys, so that'll do it for this video. I'll see everybody in the next one.